You lie down as the last light drains out of the sky. No mattress, no door, no lock. Just the cooling ground beneath you, a fire burning low, and the open dark pressing in from every side where something could be moving. For roughly 300,000 years, this was how your ancestors closed their eyes every single night. Now think about how you sleep. A locked door, 4 solid walls, a roof, a soft surface lifted off the floor, in a room held at a temperature you chose, behind glass that keeps the whole world out. Your ancestors had none of it, and yet they slept. Generation after generation, for thousands of centuries, in a world where the night belonged to things with teeth. So how did they do it? How do you sleep when sleep is the most dangerous thing you do all day? Because that is what sleep really is if you stop to look at it. For a few hours, you go blind, you go deaf to danger. Your muscles switch off so completely that you can barely move. For any animal living out in the open, that should read like a death sentence. And your ancestors were not the strongest animal out there. No claws worth a name. No armor. Slow over short distances. They shared the land with lions, with hyenas, with leopards that hunt best in exactly the dark you are lying down in. So how does a soft, clawless primate survive 8 hours of total helplessness, night after night, for hundreds of thousands of years? The first surprise is that it probably was not 8 hours. For a long time, nobody actually knew. We just guessed, based on people sleeping in modern bedrooms. Then in 2015, a sleep scientist named Jerome Siegel and his colleague Gandhi Yetish did something simple and obvious that almost nobody had done. Instead of guessing, they went to people who still live much the way your ancestors did, and they measured 3 groups on 3 continents: the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, the Tsimane in Bolivia. People who hunt, gather, and sleep under open sky, with no electricity and no clocks. The researchers strapped sensors to their wrists and recorded, night after night, exactly when they slept and for how long. The results surprised almost everyone who had assumed our ancestors slept long, deep, and early. They slept between 5 and 7 hours a night, often less than the modern office worker who complains all day about being exhausted. And here is the stranger part. Across all 3 groups, there was barely a word for insomnia. The idea of lying awake at night, unable to drift off, anxious about it, was close to meaningless. They simply did not have that problem. So they slept less than you, with more danger around them, and slept better. How? Part of the answer is when they slept, they did not lie down at sunset. The data showed they stayed awake for about 3 hours after the sun went down, sitting up, talking, tending the fire. They fell asleep as the night reached its coldest, and they woke as the temperature started climbing again just before dawn. Their sleep did not follow a clock on the wall. It followed the temperature of the air. Your body still carries that rule. You fall asleep more easily as your core temperature drops, which is exactly why a cool, dark room helps and a warm, bright one fights you. Your ancestors were not fighting that signal. They were riding it. But none of that explains the real problem. The predators, the dark, the helplessness. Sleeping through that should still have gotten a lot of people killed. The answer to that came from another researcher, an anthropologist named David Sampson, who in 2017 did something almost nobody had the patience for. He watched the Hadza sleep through the night for weeks, tracking who was awake and who was not. What he found was quietly astonishing. Across all those hours of group sleep, there were only about 18 minutes total when every single person in the camp was asleep at the same time. 18 minutes. Out of weeks. Why? Weeks. Not because anyone organized a guard. Nobody drew up a schedule. It happened on its own, because people of different ages get sleepy at different times. The older adults drifted off early and woke in the small hours, restless, alert. The younger ones stayed up late and slept in. The result, without anyone planning it, was that almost every moment of the night, someone in the group was awake. Sampson called this the sentinel hypothesis. A sentinel is just a guard, someone who keeps watch. And his idea was that human groups never really needed one, because the natural spread of sleep across young and old built a guard into the camp automatically. The grandmother waking at 4 in the morning was not a malfunction. She was the night watch. Then, there was the fire. We tend to think of fire as warmth and protection, and it was both. A fire pushes back the cold, and most predators will not walk into the light of one. But an anthropologist named Polly Wisner noticed it did something else entirely. She spent years with the Geohansi people in southern Africa, listening to what they actually talked about. By day, she found, the talk was practical and often sharp. Who was owed what? Who had done too little? Plans, complaints, arguments about resources. The ordinary business of staying alive. But the talk around the fire at night was a different thing. As the flames came up and the work fell away, the conversation turned to stories, myths, people who lived far away or had died long ago, songs. The imagination came out only after dark. Fire did not just keep the cold and the lions back. It stretched the day into the night and gave the human mind a place to wander. And here is one more piece, from much closer to your own time. A historian named Roger E. Kirch went looking through old letters, diaries, and court records from Europe, from before the electric light bulb existed. He found references over and over to something he called first sleep and second sleep. People did not sleep in one long block. They went to bed, slept for a few hours, then woke in the deep middle of the night, fully awake for an hour or more. They used that gap to pray, to talk quietly, to tend the fire, to make love, to think. Then they went back down for their second sleep until morning. Nobody treated waking in the night as a problem. It was not a disorder. It was the design. So let us reconstruct a single night, the way your ancestors actually lived it. The light is going, you do not lie down. You drift toward the fire, where the others are gathering. Children lean against the older ones. The day's arguments fade out, and someone starts a story you have heard 100 times and still want to hear again. One by one, people fold down into sleep, oldest first. The temperature drops. Your body, reading the cold, lets you go under. Hours later, you surface for a while in the dark, eyes open, listening, and across the camp, an older woman is already sitting up, awake, watching the embers. You are not afraid. There is always someone awake. You go back down. You wake before the sun, as the air begins to warm, rested. Not because the night was safe, but because the night was shared. Now here is the twist. The thing you might call a sleep problem, waking at 3 in the morning, lying there wide awake with your heart beating steady and slow, may not be broken at all. It may be the oldest sleep pattern you carry, switching itself back on inside a body that still half expects a fire and a circle of people. You wake for your gap between first sleep and second sleep, the way humans did for most of history, and then you panic, because you have been told that real sleep is one unbroken block. Your ancestors would not have understood the panic. They would have understood the waking, and that is the quiet difference between you and them. You sleep now in total safety. Locked door, solid walls, a soft bed in a room with no lions in it. And so many of us cannot stay asleep. Your ancestors slept in the open, surrounded by everything that could kill them, and woke rested and unafraid. And a group of people who, without ever deciding to, took turns holding the dark at bay. So, tonight, you will lie down as the last light drains out of the sky. The door is locked. The walls are solid. And some part of you, far older than any of it, will still wake in the dark and listen for a fire that is not there, and for the others who were always supposed to be keeping watch.